Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the term that I use a lot, which may be familiar to you or may not, veneering. And when I say that we're going to veneer these pieces of foam with some more, this foam, paper covered foam, we're going to veneer it with this carton board. It simply means, veneering just means we're going to take a thin strip of something and put it over the top of it, or a thin application of it. Veneer is usually used in conjunction with the construction of furniture and other things that kind of like woodworking sorts of things. When you want something to look a lot better than it is, you use the thin strip of veneer to go over top of something while the core of it is kind of not great. Like, this is foam. They're never going to know it's foam unless you tell them. So you can see here, I've gotten these veneered on the outside, these pieces. Now, two of these pieces, the back seat and the largest part of the seat, we're going to veneer on both sides. The small piece that goes to the inside of the bottom of the seat on the underside only needs to be veneered on one side. Now, as I said, I use carton board. I find it and save it and use it. Use whatever kind that you have. I tend to like the ones that have white on the inside, simply because when it comes to painting furniture, it means that I don't have to waste my time doing a white coat. I can usually get away with just doing 2 coats of a color, maybe 3 in like spot painting stuff. So I'm going to show you how I do this, and it's really, really easy. I'm going to use Santa here. I'm going to flip him over because you always want to be gluing to this side. Now, if the box that you have, or the paper that, or I should say carton board that you have, is super, super slick, you can take sandpaper and give it a little bit of a rough up. This can help. Man, that's really a Haddon Sunblom Santa Claus there. AKA Coca-Cola Santa Claus, if for some of you who are watching here in the US. And that'll just come off as kind of a little print dust sort of thing, but it'll kind of knock some of the shimmer off of it and help some of the glue stay attached. So I know that I need to attach it to, every piece has to have one on at least one side. So what I do, I use little pieces of recycled cardboard when I have to spread around glue. This is just where I put them. Sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're the size of this, but you can see which way the corrugation's running. That's why I cut them this way. They'll last longer if the corrugation is running the long way on these little short ones. Because when you're gluing, I'm going to take this piece, and it's going to be a little hard to see because it's white on white. I want you to see how much glue I'm putting on. And just so you know, when it comes to using the tacky glue for things like this, I do like this bottle better. Okay, you can see about how much glue I put on. Now, I could just turn it over and glue it down, but I don't like that because, number one, the glue's not going to go where I want it to go. So I take one of these little pieces and just kind of spread it around, making sure I get to all the edges and kind of make it even. Okay? It's like I'm buttering it. And then I just place it down and give it like a little wiggle. Okay, so let's do that again. The wiggle is to make sure that it's kind of getting vacuumed to the downside, or the board that I'm gluing it to. So let's grab our little glue spreader again. And you can see I'm kind of taking it off and just reorganizing where I want it to go. You could do this with a brush. I don't always use I don't like using a brush now, because then that means I have to have water, and I really don't want to do that. So I've gotten it all the way around the edge, and I'm going to turn this one this way. It'll make it a little easier to cut. I'm going to give it a little wiggle and press it down. Now, if you've decided you're going to make like 4 chairs and you really want to make sure that they're dry, or you only have a couple of minutes to work, you could just put these underneath, say, a thick paperback. and leave them where they are, and they'll dry nice and flat. But you can see these are drying pretty well. Now, I know I need it on this side too, so one more time. This also helps me not use a ton of white glue in places where I maybe don't need a ton of it, if that makes sense. I basically just need this to hold together. Okay, so I'm going to put that one there. Give it a little wiggle. Now, when it comes time to cutting these out, I'm going to move these over here to get them out of the way. This method with the paper wrapped or the paper topped foam core, it grabs pretty quickly and holds on pretty quickly. Now, if you want, you can use a straight edge to do this. Or what you can do is place it next to and draw very carefully. And remember how I'm cutting. I'm not pressing down here. I'm way back here. Okay? And I don't feel as though I need to remind you that whenever you are using a sharp blade like this, you also need to make sure that you are in the right frame of mind to do it. Don't be rushing. Number 2, do not put anything that can bleed or potentially bleed in front of that blade. And you should have, if you have little ones or animals, make sure they're out of the room so no one's jumping on you. So you can see here, I cut it straight and left those there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors and just go nip, nip. And remember how I took care of the little edges in the beginning with the sandpaper? You can do the same exact thing once these are completely dry. I'm looking for there it is. There's my little emery board. And you just knock off the corner. You don't have to cut a whole lot off. I'm always reminded of how I taught my little pre-K and kindergartners to cut out a circle from a square of paper. We were looking for the corners. And you just had to, you trim off bigger to smaller. And you made an octagon along the way. So now that side is covered. Okay. Now, you'll do that with these pieces too, but I'm going to show you that once this is dry, you're going to do it again. Now you may be asking, why don't I just glue both pieces down and cut them? It's not going to work because you won't know where you're going. I also want to reiterate going slowly on this. It's not something, for me when I'm working on these, I tend to get, sorry, my phone just squawked at me for a second, but it's continuing to record. I don't know that you heard that. Let me get this in here. If I glued both of them at the same time, I'd have a hard time getting inside and knowing where to cut. Now, there are some of you who may be thinking, do I really have to use the knife? The knife scares me. Or I want to do this with, say, my 10-year-old or my 12-year-old who I'm not too great with the knife. I don't want to worry about a knife with them. Never fear. This is a little Debbie box. It can very easily be cut with scissors. I just make sure that I keep my scissors flush and cut slowly. You can see there? And anything that might be sticking over or isn't close to the edge, ta-da! You can just very lightly sand it away. So if the blade is not going to work for you, don't use it in this instance. Now, when you are working with the corrugated cardboard, you're going to have to work with a blade. However, as I was going along and creating this pattern, There's parts of me that are always thinking about, well, what if, what if, what if? And I'm thinking about friends of mine who live in Sweden, or not Sweden, well, yeah, friends of mine who live in Sweden, who live in Norway. I have friends that live in Finland, and they may not be able to get foam core board, but I know that if I were still living in Finland, there was a model building place, like shop, that did RC cars and planes and all kinds of stuff. And they had bass board and they had balsa wood. So if you can lay your hands on balsa wood, you could totally do this out of balsa wood. The cutting is similar, and so is the sanding. You just don't need to cover the top. You don't need to veneer anything if you're going to use balsa wood, because it's going to be the same thing all the way through. So this is how you veneer both sides of a piece. Now remember, for this piece in here, don't have to veneer it. We've already veneered one side, so I'm just going to come in here and nip this off. I tend to go a little quicker because this is probably the 50th chair I've put together. And if you can cut a curve, cut a curve. If you don't want to, then use my method of nipping off the side, the little baby triangle. That's what I used to call them with my students. Cut the baby triangles, because this is going to get glued here with this same glue, the same tacky glue. But I first need to show you how we're going to make these strips. These are veneering strips because we've already gotten the big part veneered. Now we need to veneer around the outside. I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video.